In developing the diocese, we tried to develop provincial deaneries. So that we had Quebec and Ontario and Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and BC. We found that at one time the number of parishes was not so large on the prairies, and because of history, and so Manitoba and Saskatchewan have been, for the most part, combined under one dean. Sometimes the dean was in Yorkton, and sometimes the dean was in Winnipeg. The main development of the parishes in the West from the previously existing number began from Edmonton on the prairies. In fact, it really did. With the establishment of St. Herman of Alaska in Edmonton in 1977, it was the first English-speaking community, and it started in a very small way with Father Stephen Kistruk, who had been a graduate of St. Vladimir's Seminary. And he also had a secular job at the time and was able to support his missionary work in developing the parish, which went from being a garage at the very south edge of the city to occupying a former Protestant building in the west end of the city, and then finally to building the current temple of St. Herman of Alaska in the west end of the city. From St. Herman's in Edmonton came St. Peter the Aleut, the Holy Martyr, in Calgary. And from this, they were able to grow rather quickly, in fact. It seemed at the time slow, because there was a great deal of work that had to be done by the people to sustain the economy of the parish, with bake sales and the sales of all kinds of services and they gift wrapping at a mall and that sort of thing. They also developed a system of decoupaging icons for sale, and from this they were able to subsidize the development of the parish and its needs. They went from this acreage into a former Protestant building in the west part of the city, and after some years of growing there and with steady and significant growth, they were able to build their own building, which is currently still functioning in the west end of the city. From that parish developed the St. Peter the Aleut, the Holy Martyr, in Calgary, and also the seeds of a mission in Red Deer, Alberta. And in this year, 2024, in Edmonton, there is now another mission developing in the city of Edmonton, St. Olga of Alaska, which opened on the 4th of February, with 40 families from not 40 families, but 40 people from St. Herman's. There's a third parish in Edmonton as well, a parish that was there from 1950s. First it belonged to our diocese, then it belonged to the church outside Russia, and then it came back to our diocese in the early part of the 2000s. And it is also growing. So there's development there. There are other missionary, other kinds of missionary outreach that have been happening from Edmonton, and that is towards the rural parishes which were losing their numbers because of linguistic difficulties and problems with organization. So from Edmonton, which became a deanery center, there was help given in the organization and finding priests to serve, which enabled those parishes to continue to function and, in fact, to grow a bit. There are many more stories to talk about such things in Alberta and also Saskatchewan, where parishes were developing beyond the one that existed when I became a bishop, and in which I was ordained to be a deacon in Holy Trinity, Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. There are many more active parishes than were then. Then there's British Columbia, which is a very significant place in our diocesan history, I think, at least in the west part, because we have Holy Resurrection Church, which became a Sabor in Vancouver. This is the first Orthodox church in the province of BC. And it's the mother church, actually, we could say, the mother church of all the other Orthodox churches that have since been established in BC. In one way or another, it's kind of mother to them all. But significantly for our diocese, from Holy Resurrection, first developed Victoria in the earliest times, not the earliest times, but in the earlier days of this recent period. In the time of Bishop Yoasaph, when he was the rector of Holy Resurrection in Vancouver, he was, with the help of Father Oleg, not Father Oleg, but Father Kirill, and others, developing a small community in Victoria. That community lasted for a while, and then it faded away, but it was there first, until it would revive again later on in the 90s. Then came St. Herman of Alaska in Vancouver. This began in the backyard domestic chapel of Dr. Edward Paul and his wife Vivian Maria Hartley in what was then Whalley, but is now part of Greater Surrey. And after some years in the early 1980s, the beginning of this community as an actual parish came about. And it came about first with the arrival of Father Andrew Morby for a period of time, and then when he moved away, there came Father Lawrence Farley. Father Lawrence Farley had been an Anglican priest before, and he studied at St. Tikhon's Monastery and Seminary in Pennsylvania, and then came to Vancouver to serve at St. Herman's. He also had to work himself to support his pastoral activities, and through a lot of difficulties with trying to establish in Langley first, and then going back to Surrey, and then going back again finally to Langley, the parish of St. Herman has continued to develop until recently. A couple of years ago, their own temple, newly built, purpose-built as they say nowadays, was erected to the glory of God, and very visibly an Orthodox temple. Father Lawrence himself has been very missionary-minded, and he has nurtured priestly vocations in many young men. So that as a result, there's in Actually, for a time there were two other missions, but now there is one which is now situated in North Vancouver, and there remains a mission that was left in Gibson's on the Sunshine Coast when the monastery moved away, and from Vancouver, the parishioners there are being served still. There is missionary work still continuing from earlier times in Kamloops, and from this there are two other entities in the far east of British Columbia. There's St. Aidan's in Cranbrook, and then there's the St. John in the Wilderness Mission in Caslow on one of the Kootenay Lakes, and there are priests serving these communities also. On top of all of this, from Holy Resurrection, which has never stopped fostering other communities, there is now a community developing, a missionary community developing in Kelowna in British Columbia. And Father Michael Furyk, the Dean of British Columbia at the present time, has been traveling there on a regular basis, nurturing the development of this community of Orthodox people, many of whom are newly arrived even. And there's one more that I can think of, and that is Whitehorse, Yukon, which has also come from the work of the missionary work in British Columbia. A parish came to be established in Whitehorse. It was served by clergy from Alberta at first, but now it has its own permanent resident priest, and it's part of the deanery of British Columbia. There are many other developments of missionary activities in the eastern Canada as well, in Ontario and Quebec, but I can't use all this time to describe them all. That's for another time.